Trafficking is modern-day slavery. Slavery, simply defined, is when you lose your freedom to the control of another.
It really can happen to anybody, whether they're a child or an adult. I was raised in northern New York. When I was 3, my parents got divorced, and I never saw my dad again. About the time I turned 15, my mom met the man that I call my dad. The reason that's significant is because that's when everything kind of changed and put me where I met this other world. We moved to Virginia Beach, Virginia. Met a girl at school who we just kind of got along fabulously. Turned out she only lived about 10 blocks from where I live. Not something that I think any parent in America would be worried about your child doing. However, that's where I met the man who trafficked me on those walks to her house.
We think it has to involve going across borders because of the word trafficking. The forms of human trafficking can include debt bondage, domestic servitude, there's labor trafficking, and then there's the most known one, which is sex trafficking.
The first time I ever set eyes on him, he was just another person on the sidewalk. In the South, you always wave and say hi. It's the polite thing to do. I didn't really realize that every time I was walking to her house, there he was. And he always would stop and talk to me. And so over a time of several months, we became friends, and I really thought we were dating. One mistake that I personally made was dating somebody who was way too older for me. That should have been a red flag. I should have realized, stay away from this guy.
They'll spend up to, I don't know how many months, I've heard the longest 8 months, doing what they call grooming you, getting you to trust them, conditioning you.
But it's about building that relationship to where you feel like you trust them, and I did feel like I trusted him.
They pick out vulnerabilities and weaknesses. Your statistics say that there's about 80 to 90% of victims are going to be your female, and then half of that is under the age of 18 for the purpose of vulnerability.
And one night he picked me up, we were supposed to go dancing, and he said he forgot something at his house. We went inside, he turned and started kissing me in front of the fireplace. While he was holding me, another man came off the stairwell. It was like he'd been hiding there. And for the next several hours, they raped and sodomized me. When they were done, they just kind of got up nonchalantly and went to the kitchen, and I stumbled to my feet and I ran to this little half bathroom and locked myself in there. I was thinking there was a window in the bathroom. I got in the bathroom and there wasn't a window. As soon as I stepped into the hallway, he stepped into the entrance. I couldn't understand what he was saying. He was talking to me and I'm just looking at him, terrified. And then he said my sister's name, and all of a sudden everything got really clear. He was saying basically that I would do what he said to do and be where he told me to be from that point on, unless I wanted my sister Cassandra to become involved. Cassandra at the time was 5 or 6. I didn't have any reason to not believe that he would do to her what he had done to me. By the time the 2 years was over, he had ended up meeting every person in my family without them having any inkling who he was in my life. He would pick me up and take me to residences in there that people would do whatever they wanted. It's very common for victims to be moved from one city to the next for several reasons. One, so that they don't get familiar with where they are, and 2, because the buyers in those cities want fresh product, for lack of a better word, and so they're constantly changing. There was this one house in Norfolk, this one buyer who came frequently that I remember several times. He would ask my trafficker, how much longer? The other thing he said is, when will she be ready? My trafficker would always get mad at him and take him out of the room. I don't know what they talked about, but it was like, how much longer? Why would you ask that? So I don't know if they were fixing to start moving me. It was like a miracle how I got out. One night he picked me up and we were driving to what I thought was another house. He suddenly just kind of pulled over into this little shopping center. He stopped under a parking light lamp. It's like really late. He just kind of turned to me and he looked at me really strange, and he said, I don't want to ever see you again. I don't want you to try to find me. I don't want you to go any of the places I've taken you or try to see any of the people that you've seen. This is the only way I can save you. And he grabbed me by the shoulders and kissed my forehead and then pushed me away, and he went and got in his car and drove off and left me standing in this parking lot. I have absolutely no recollection of how I got home that night, but I know he didn't love me. I like to think it was the Holy Spirit leading him or intervening somehow. I don't know what he meant by this is the only way he could protect me. I didn't start talking about this till 2011 because in my prayer time, God was telling me that he wanted me to share this story And for about 2 months, I argued with him because nobody knew. And at that point, I had been married for 27 years. My family didn't know. I just had never seen the purpose of telling them, because you can't undo it. I didn't see how telling them something that horrible is going to help. I just figured it would hurt nothing.
The more we get out awareness, the more people want to be involved because it hits something in their heart. Everybody has a story. So whether or not they've been trafficked, they've gone through something that gives them sympathy with the human race that says, I have to do something about this.
And for a lot of years afterwards, the trauma that I sustained was so intense that I had a lot of memory loss.
During the force of prostitution, they can remove their mind and they can be somewhere else. Well, that creates a lot of times multiple personalities and a lot of other disorders.
There was a lot of factors as to why, but did I forgive him? Yeah. I do pray that somehow he's found God, like a real relationship with Christ, because if he hasn't, I wouldn't want anybody to have to pay for what he did.
Pray for the Johns, pray for the bad guys, because we've seen the bad guys be restored. We've seen them be on the good side.
I think it's real imperative for us as a society to understand how not rare this is.
There are several ways you can be safe against human trafficking. If you have any type of social media, you want to make sure that your settings are on private. And people can get really snuffy about that because they're like, but I want everybody to see how cool I am, and that's fine. But everybody includes that creeper who's been watching you for the last 2 weeks. He's been watching you for 2 weeks, he didn't mind you.
Educate yourself, educate your kids. And nobody's ever safe when they believe that it won't happen to them.